Yo, what's going on at YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be recapping the series between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins. And this is going to be a difficult video to do because I honestly, listen, I'm an Islanders fan. I hate John Tavares. I feel bad for the Maple Leafs and their fans after this one. It's spectacular for all the wrong reasons, how we got to this point, and we'll talk about that as this video goes along. But this series is the definition of what's wrong with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we're going to go over that in today's video and, yeah, try and somehow break this down, because overall, this series, we've seen this way too many times before, and it's just one of those things where the Leafs go down 3-1 in this series. They've done that before. They come back to make a Game 7 in Boston. They did that this year as well. They lose in overtime with a third period lead. They've done that before. What did we really think was going to happen differently this time? What was the X factor that was going to make things different for the Leafs? Because Brad Treliving was upstairs? Because Samsonov was the goalie? Because Joseph Woll was the goalie? What was going to be the X factor that was going to separate what was different between 2013 and every other series they've had up to this point to now? Not really much. So we're going to go over that. So, oh man. All right, so let's just start with Game 1. Boston wins Game 1 5-1. Really concerning. The fire alarm bells were already going off in Toronto after Game 1. Jake DeBrusk is a Leaf killer. He did that in Game 1. He scored 2 goals in that game and really set the tone for the series early on. Toronto came back and won an impressive Game 2. Linus Ullmark actually started that game, but that was the only game he would start in this series, and that was kind of how things went. Game 3, Boston won Game 3, 4-2. Marchand got 2 goals in that game, so you're seeing the bigger guys scoring in bunches for the Bruins early. DeBrusk getting a pair in Game 1, Marchand getting a pair in Game 3. Where's Matthews? Nylander's hurt. Where's Tavares? Where's Marner? So that's kind of where things were at after Game 3. Game 4, this was a big loss for the Leafs, and this is what ultimately lost them the series. Of course, Game 7, they ultimately lost the series, but let's be honest, after Game 4, Boston winning both games in Toronto, that really stung. That was the first nail in the coffin for the Leafs this season. Jeremy Swayman played incredible. He had a .960 save percentage. It was a 3-1 win for the Boston Bruins. And you're kind of waiting for more clarification about the health of this team. Matthews leaves Game 4 early. He left at the end of the second period, didn't come back out for the third, and we know how things went after that. So Austin Matthews doesn't play the end of Game 4. 3-1 win for the Bruins. Game 5, Toronto comes back with their backs against the wall up in Boston. That was a big win for them. That was a momentum shifter in the series that ultimately propelled this to a 7-game series. That was a big win for Toronto. Obviously, they had to win the game. It was an overtime game winner by Matthew Knies. Joseph Woll also played incredible in this game and really allowed the Leafs to have some life going into Toronto for Game 6. And they did. And Toronto, once again, a 2-1 victory in this game. William Nylander, back from his injuries and everything else, the migraines and stuff like that, he gets a pair of goals. That's what the Leafs needed. But, again, Games 5 and 6 without Austin Matthews, which definitely hurt this team. And then we get to So between Game 6 and Game 7, a lot of drama happened. And, Jim Montgomery calls out David Pastrnak, saying that we need more goal scoring from our top players. And I talk about this a lot, and I use Pastrnak as an example. When there's a lot of teams around the league that need the type of player that is David Pastrnak. The guy that, when he steps on the ice, is 99.9% of the time a threat. And through a lot of this series, it kind of looked like Pastrnak was kind of nonchalant and kind of falling off of his game. Jim Montgomery calls him out, and Pastrnak had the perfect answer. He said, if I was Jim Montgomery in his shoes, I would say the exact same thing. Incredible response, because of course we know how things go in Game 7. We're getting there. There's more to the story, though, for the Leafs side of things, because no Joseph Woll. Seems like he's injured. He was playing incredible in Games 5 and 6. Definitely gave the Leafs a chance to win this series. I think he had a .946 save percentage and a 960. I don't remember which games he had that save percentage, but between those two games, he played incredible. And like I said, I mean, 2-1 victories, he was giving up enough goals where the Leafs could have outscored the Bruins. It just wasn't happening. And then obviously Austin Matthews, who has now been out since the end of the second period in Game 4. Now we haven't seen him for the third period of Game 4, all of Game 5, all of Game 6, and it seems like a game-time decision whether we'll see him for Game 7. So the Leafs are doing the whole song and dance with Bobby McMahon playing and Austin Matthews in the practice. And the Leafs were doing everything possible to not give anything away whether Matthews was playing or not. Matthews does ultimately end up playing. Great. But like I said, no Joseph Woll for Game 7, which means they go back to Ilya Samsonov. And Game 7, really solid game. The first two periods, everyone just decides, all right, I guess we're not scoring till the third. We're gonna make this a dramatic effect, and that's exactly what they did. Really impressive here. William Nylander, despite everything that happened and things like that, I would say he's one of the bright spots of this team. He scored 2 goals in his game that he came back. He scores a really big goal in Game 7, ultimately the leading goal in this game for the Leafs, with 10:39 left in regulation. William Nylander gets a massive goal, making it 1-0 Leafs. We've seen this before, though. And then, of course, Boston ties the game. Hampus Lindholm, not only did he have an incredible Game 7, it was highlighted by Game 7, but he had an incredible series. So, give credit where it's due there for the Bruins. Hampus Lindholm had an incredible series for the Bruins. He ultimately gets the goal to tie the game. That's a rough one for Samsonov, but it's hard to put all the blame on him because he only gave up 1 goal in this game. So, technically through 60 minutes, he gave up 1 goal. So, where's the rest of the Leafs here? You need to get more than 1 goal, especially against a team like the Boston Bruins who will keep things close. You got to find a way there. They weren't able to. This game ultimately goes to overtime. We've seen this song and dance before. Matthew Knies has a really good opportunity basically right off the puck drop of overtime. And then that was it. And then a weird carom. I think Hampus Lindholm's going to tell you he did it on purpose. Honestly, it kind of looked like he did it on purpose with how he executed that, using the home ice advantage boards for TD Garden. Hampus Lindholm dumps the puck in, really hard bounce off the boards, right to David Pastrnak in front. You can't even blame the Leafs defense for the coverage of that because I don't think they honestly thought that puck was going to bounce out like that. People are giving Samsonov a hard time because he didn't read the play right. Because the problem is if he misses that puck coming off the boards, well, now that's just a vacant net. So either way, that puck was going to go in. A really hard spot there for Samsonov. Ultimately, Pastrnak right there, beams to the net, knows where the puck's going to go. And David Pastrnak, a really impressive goal. Backhand, forehand, back of the net. And that's it. And the Boston Bruins, you see the picture of the goalie sprawled out after the goal is scored. We've seen that before. After the puck goes in disbelief. I remember that 2013, James Reimer laying out flat on the ice. Samsonov doing the same thing here. It is the most nightmare thing that a Leafs fan could experience and the most funny thing that a Bruins fan could see. It happened again. And David Pastrnak, who got called out, ultimately gets this, not only the game-winning goal, the series-winning goal for the Boston Bruins. And that's it. And everything after that, give credit where it's due for the Bruins. Linus Ullmark stepped in Game 2. Jeremy Swayman was a huge part of this series. I mean, he really outdueled whatever the Leafs threw out there, whether it was Joseph Woll or Ilya Samsonov. He played really well in this series. And Joseph Woll, give credit where it's due there. I mean, Joseph Woll played really well for the Leafs. He gave them a chance in this series. I think it was just too little too late. And I really feel bad for Samsonov. He just has not been able to make it work in the NHL. And I really do feel bad for him. I remember watching him in the American Hockey League developing with the Hershey Bears. He just could never get it together in North America. And this was his last shot, I think. I would not be surprised if Samsonov goes back overseas after this season. Um, I mean, he looked dejected. Tyler Bertuzzi was actually giving him kind of like a, it's all right, buddy, kind of thing after, but really tough. And I know that, ultimately it's the performance that matters, and he didn't show up when it mattered. Man, that's tough, though. Tough series, tough situation for Matthews. Matthews didn't show up for most of the series. Yeah, he scored a big goal in Game 2 that ultimately won them Game 2. He got the game winner in that one. But he was unhealthy. Nylander was having migraines. Like, this team just wasn't able to get together. And ultimately, the blame on this series is going to go to, if you're looking at the core four, and we'll talk about this in our off-season video, John Tavares and Mitch Marner did not do enough in this series. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, Marner scored one pivotal goal, but they ultimately lost that game anyway. Matthew Knies looked pretty good. Nylander looked pretty good. And same thing for Matthews, but, in retrospect, those are the three guys that are going to stay here, I think. But they weren't even fully healthy. And Matthew Knies was, but Nylander and Matthews not being healthy still played very well despite the situation. I know you don't want to hear that pat on the back because they lost the series. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. But that's something that those guys can build on staying with the Leafs. But you can't say the same for Marner and Tavares. Not good enough. Now, I hate to say it, you're going to trade those guys for very much less value than you want to. A, because of their contracts, and B, because of their recent performance. The reason you're trading those guys is because they're underperforming, which means you are not going to get a maximum return for them. So we're going to talk about this in the offseason video for the Leafs, but I don't know what you do with those two. This is a really bad situation. Do you even consider buying out John Tavares this summer and just to send a message? Like, I don't know what you do with those two. It is going to be extremely difficult this is going to be the real test for Brad Treliving as the GM of the Maple Leafs. He's got to figure out what to do with those two guys. In all honesty, I think some changes to the blue line naturally are going to happen because a lot of these guys aren't going to be there. They're pending UFAs, so some of them are going to leave anyway. Like Giordano, who's the other one? Jake Muzzin's going to come off the books, so that's actually a good thing. That's dead cap that now will come off the books, so Muzzin will no longer be there. Don't have to worry about that. There was one other defenseman that I'm forgetting about that you guys will, I'm sure, let me know who I'm forgetting. We're going to talk about what the Leafs can do in the offseason in another video. I mean, obviously, this is going to be a cataclysmic change for the Leafs. I'm expecting everything from Brendan Shanahan down to crumble. And Brad Treliving is going to be, have you ever seen where they have the, it's like a cartoon. They've got the big building that just crashes down and there's one guy sitting there, like sitting at his desk, just doing his work, and everything else, kind of crumbles around him. That's Brad Treliving. Brad Treliving's the only one that's going to be sitting there in the ivory tower. Everything else in the ivory tower is going to go down. That's my prediction, but we'll see how things go. The way Sheldon Keefe handled the post-game press conference, very defeated. Very defeated. Let me pull up the quote that he said, because he's going to lose his job. This is not speculation. This is not like, he might keep his job. With what he said, he is looking to get out. He's basically forcing the Leafs' hand here with what he said. Let's look at the quote here. So there's a quote from Sheldon Keefe. And we're going to talk about the Bruins, guys. My Bees fans out there, stay tuned. I will talk about you guys in a second. Quote, when teams beat the Leafs, they set up the game for the Leafs to beat themselves. Who's ultimately responsible for that? It's Sheldon Keefe. He's selfly admitting he's the reason they lost this series. So he's not coming back. I don't know if there's an over-under on whether Sheldon Keefe gets fired or not. He's getting fired. And yeah, a lot of the core said the right things. Tavares, Nylander, I saw their press conferences. They kind of said, like, we have the right pieces. They said all the right things, right? They're not going to sit there and say, yeah, we need to blow everything up. They're not going to say that, but they will. They're going to do something here. It's just a matter of who and what they get in return and who they sign. We'll talk about that later. But for the Bruins, this is going to be a lot of Panthers fans think it's a super advantage for them that they're going to get whoever's kind of beat up in this series. In all honesty, the Leafs didn't really beat them up physically, so I think this is actually an advantage for the Bruins going into their second round matchup against the Panthers. The Panthers have been off since last Tuesday, I think. Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. They've been off for almost a week. The Bruins are going to have the fresher legs in the sense of they're going to be warm. They know how to they've been playing hockey and keeping going. I think that's an edge for them. I think the Bruins should win game 1 of the series in Florida, in all honesty. And I think with the way that the Panthers are playing right now, they might win this series. I think there's a scenario where if we'll talk about this in my preview, but I think that the Panthers are going to win a game in Boston. So if the Bruins don't win one of those first 2 games in Florida, I think it's going to be 3-1 Florida heading back to game 5, and that's a tricky situation for the Bruins. They have to win one of those games in Florida, the first 2 games, if I'm the Bruins. And I think game 1 is your best opportunity to do that. With that said, Jeremy Swayman's been playing incredible, and I think they're going to need to rely on him moving forward. I know they put in Ullmark for game 2. It seemed like the right move at the time. Don't do that. We've seen that before. Stick with Jeremy Swayman. He's your number 1. It sucks with the whole thing with Ullmark. He probably deserves some playing time, and he got his playing time in game 2. Stick with Jeremy Swayman. You want the Stanley Cup? Stick with Jeremy Swayman. Don't even give us the debate on who's going to be in and this and that. It's another distraction that the Bruins don't need. Stick with Jeremy Swayman going into the second round. David Pastrnak, it's nice to see him getting on the board there late in the series. Hopefully that carries over into the next series. We saw a little bit of Jake DeBrusk, Brad Marchand. Those guys were scoring. Now we need to see some more of the depth getting on the board as well, because the Bruins, I think that is their one chink in the armor. This is a team that does not score a ton of goals. And that was pretty evident in this series. And give credit to the Leafs defense. They held them to, in games 5, 6, and 7, the score was 2-1 in all 3 of those games. So that's pretty good on the Leafs defense, but also kind of a knack at the Bruins offense. The offense has been a problem for the Bruins really for the last couple of months, drying up. And that was a concern going into this series. Would the Bruins be able to score enough with a high potent offense like Toronto? They ultimately did just enough, but against the Panthers, we saw what they beat the bejesus out of the Tampa Bay Lightning, a well-respected franchise. The Bruins, they got to find a way to get more goal scoring if they want to win in the second round, and we'll talk about that in our playoff preview against the Panthers video. I'll be doing a separate video on each of these teams. We're going to be doing a full deep dive look into the Leafs. We're going to be doing a full deep dive into the next round for the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins series. So we'll be going over all of that stuff in the next coming videos. So stay tuned for that. If you've stuck around this long, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. The channel's been booming here in the first round of the playoffs. I hope that continues through the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs, going into the NHL draft and beyond. So thank you to all of you guys for watching this video. If you like this content, want to see more videos like it, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time. Peace out, guys.